Asalamualikum. Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to my channel. I pray that you are all in the best of health and iman. If you are new, welcome. My name is Nafisa. I am a Muslimah life coach and I support Muslim women with relationship and mental health issues. So if you're interested in being coached in those areas, you can find me over on my website, which I will leave linked in the description box down below. But over here on YouTube, I make Islamic lifestyle as well as dawah content. So if you're interested in that, then definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Before all of that, I'm actually a teacher. So if you're interested in online home tuition for children between the ages of 8 to 18, then definitely check out my website for more info on that as well. So in today's video, we are discussing the reason why women stay in toxic relationships for so long. I wanted to make this video to perhaps enlighten anyone out there who is in a relationship that is very toxic and is wondering, why am I remaining here? And I want to let that woman, I want to let her know that there is a lot of internal work that needs to be done so that she knows exactly the type of help and support that she will need in order to get out of that toxic relationship. Because toxic relationships have the ability to destroy the soul of a human, the peace of mind of a human being. It makes life a very miserable place to live. Now, we know that in this life we are tested, and sometimes people are sent into our lives as a test for us. But as with any other test, we should always seek a way out through Allah and through our efforts as well. So I hope this video serves you in helping you to just have relief in knowing that there are other people who are going through the same thing you are going through, and understanding that, okay, now I know my issue, so now I know what I need help with. So without further ado, let's jump straight into today's video. The number one reason in my experience as a relationship coach that I believe that women stay in toxic relationships for far too long, I believe that it all comes down to something that I called emotional pain threshold. Women seem to have a very high emotional pain threshold. Generally, a person's pain threshold is how much they can take before too much becomes too much. And oftentimes, women in relationships can take so much before they eventually get to that point where they say enough is enough. Unfortunately for some women, they never get to that point when they say enough is enough, and so I am ready to go. They stay there until the day they die. And unfortunately, it means they live a very miserable life, but they learn to accept that that's just how things are for themselves. And they don't realize the impact that that can have on the children, because the children get to watch their mother, or sometimes also if it's the father that's going through this traumatic experience, then the children watch the parents display this unhealthy emotional dynamic, unhealthy relationship dynamic, and it destroys the children as well. And sometimes it is better to get out of a bad and toxic relationship than to remain in it. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows for divorce to happen in Islam. As Muslims, we don't believe that marriage is for better and for worse, and no matter what happens, you stay. As Muslims, we believe in marriage. We believe that it is work. We believe that it is sacrifice. It involves some difficult times as well as some good times. But we also believe that when it becomes toxic to the point where it's destroying a person's soul, it's destroying their physical health so bad, they have the choice to say no. And that is okay. Having said that, I'm not an advocate for divorce right away. I'm not an advocate for any little thing that happens, just use divorce as an excuse. I do believe it is the very, very last resort. But I know that there are women who are at a place where they really should be exploring this option, but they are refusing to explore this option. And rather they're choosing to remain in toxic relationships that's not only destroying them, but destroying their children also. And so this very high pain threshold that women often have means that they take so much. You will have everybody in that woman's life telling her, this is bad for you. It's often, I find, quite rare to find that a Muslim who fears Allah will tell you that you should leave your husband. Very, very rare. There are few and far in between people who will actually tell you straight away, leave your husband. But when the relationship becomes so toxic, and people, despite how much they try to hold that, verbalization in, they get to a point where they just feel like, I feel like I have to tell this woman that this isn't healthy. This is bad for her. I'm talking in extreme cases. But yet women will still stay because, again, she hasn't reached what I like to call her rock bottom. Every woman has a rock bottom. However, before she gets to that rock bottom, it can take a lot. And the rock bottom is that place where she gets to and she's like, I've had enough. I'm going to leave. And not just her saying it, but her actually taking actions. When a woman begins to take action towards divorce, she's reached her rock bottom. And believe it or not, for a lot of women, it takes a lot to get to that rock bottom. And so until she gets to that rock bottom, everybody else in her life could be telling her, this isn't good for you. But trust me, she hasn't reached her rock bottom, so she will not leave. Despite how much pain she's gone through, despite what it's doing to the children, despite what it's doing to her, despite the impact it's had on her life, despite all of that, because she hasn't reached her rock bottom, she won't leave. And I want all of us to be aware of that, because sometimes it may be our friends or our sisters or even ourselves when we're going through issues, or when other people are going through issues and you're trying to tell them that this isn't good for you and they're not listening, they're not wanting to take actions. Sometimes it bottles down to the fact that they haven't reached their rock bottom. If you ask a woman, what are your boundaries? What will you take? She can give you a whole lot of lip service about what she will take. But when she's actually in that situation, you'll find that she takes on so much more than what she said she would. So much more. Again, because at her core, she hasn't reached her rock bottom. And so she remains there until she gets there. So if you ever give an advice to any woman and she refuses to take it, just know in her mind, she hasn't reached her rock bottom, despite how bad and toxic this relationship may be for her. The next reason why some women stay in toxic relationship is because of low self-esteem. And low self-esteem may be coming from how she views herself, and maybe she's done a lot of negative self-talk in the past. Maybe she's experienced trauma in her childhood, but also low self-esteem, perhaps because she may be dealing with a very manipulative partner who has guilt-tripped her into believing that she's not worthy or that she has nothing to offer. And if you want more encouragement on that, watch the video that I made previously titled Things High-Value Muslim Women Don't Let Men Do. Watch that video. But back onto this point, because she may have a very manipulative partner, a very manipulative husband or a person, that person has managed to brainwash her into actually believing that she's worth nothing. Actually believing that if you leave me, you will never find anyone better than me because I'm such a great person for putting up with you because you're such a bad person. And a lot of the times you will find narcissistic men, whether they're Muslim or not, this is a tactic they love to use because they know that they cannot abuse a woman whose self-esteem is healthy. So they have to find a way to break her down. And once they've broken her down, then and only then can they manage to get her to stay, because she then begins to view them as the prize. And then she then begins to feel like, oh my God, how lucky I am to have this person. All of that could be gaslighting, of course, because like with most narcissistic individuals, they have an external appearance that everybody else sees and like, oh my God, mashallah. But the person within is so messed up and so toxic. But everybody else, you would think the wife is the crazy woman because how ungrateful that she has such a husband like this. as in the way he appears to everybody else, and yet still it's not good enough for her. So she must just be a very ungrateful wife. And so she begins to second guess herself all the time. So she remains there, because if she dares to leave, number one, she has to battle within her own self about whether or not she made the right decision. But number two, she also has to deal with other people and how they're all going to tell her that she made such a wrong decision, leaving such a quote unquote great man. And so self-esteem has a lot to do with how much people will tolerate. And so that takes me on to my third point about why women tend to stay in toxic relationships. And that is also because they have no boundaries, or their boundaries are very flimsy. When a woman has little to no boundary, she begins to attract people who are toxic. And those people get to remain in her life because she continues not to have any boundaries. But I feel like to some extent, us women can be excused here because we're not raised as women to have boundaries. Some people may see that skill in and of itself to be something quite masculine, and toxic masculinity, and all the people that support all of that these days will use that to say, well, then she's not feminine because how dare she enforces her boundaries on me. She's meant to obey what I say to her. And so women are deterred from having boundaries, and again, it just leaves you vulnerable to toxic people. And so the way that it makes you stay in a bad relationship is that you can't enforce your no. So even if you say, I don't want this marriage anymore, they find a way to keep you in that marriage, or they find a way to guilt trip you into that marriage, or they find a way to make you the problem. And of course, you let it all happen to you because you have no boundaries. In fact, in some areas and parts of the world, you have the elders will get involved and they'll manage to speak to you. And because of the respect you have for the elders, you stay in a toxic relationship, again, because you have no boundaries. Elders who are not in your marriage, elders who don't know what you're experiencing, elders who don't feel the pain you are feeling, they will just come and say, oh, sister, be patient. You could go out there and there's probably worse out there. Who's going to marry you at this age? What are you going to do? They come with all these things. They plead and plead and plead. Your husband is sorry. Forgive him for the sake of Allah. Then they want to pull out the religious card of, if you forgive for the sake of Allah, then Allah rewards you. They are ready to pull out the religious card for you as the woman to forgive him, but they were not there when he was doing his sin. And for most men, if you have no boundaries with them, trust me, they will not only harm you once, they will harm you multiple times, because everything goes. And that is the bottom line with not having boundaries. Everything goes. And because you don't have boundaries, you're therefore not respected. And it gets to a point where even you don't respect yourself either. And when you don't respect yourself, it's very unlikely that you will have the confidence to take such a huge decision that requires you to be selfish in some way and actually put you first or put your children first. And so because you lack that self-confidence, you will never reach a place where you actually finally make that decision to leave that toxic relationship. And so you stay and you continue to suffer the cycle of toxic relationships. So lack of boundaries can be one of the reasons why women stay in toxic relationships. The next reason why I believe that women stay in toxic relationships is because oftentimes they are mentally too weak. What I mean by them being mentally too weak is strong women have this quality of being able to make decisions that are emotionally painful, but they are decisions that is ultimately good for their future. And so they're able to suffer the immediate pain that comes with detachment. They're able to suffer or go through the pain of separating from someone that they've shared a life with, because they know that it is for the greater good their greater good, the greater good of their future, the greater good of their children's future, that it may hurt now, but in the future, I will have peace of mind. Some women are not able to make that decision. For some women, the fear of the pain, the fear of, oh my God, the separation, all they can see is the here and now and what they're going to suffer then. And am I going to be able to cope if I decide to make this huge decision? And of course, divorce should never be an easy decision. I'm going to keep emphasizing that. It should never be a decision that you take without making istihara, without giving it multiple chances, because everybody can make a mistake, right? But when a mistake begins to become a habit and it's repetitive and it begins to hurt you and you've been suffering for years, 10, 15, 20 years, some women, 30 years, some women have been suffering and they're still in it. And that's when some people get to the point where they're just like, what is this life? Am I just here to suffer? The last reason that I want to give in this video with regards to why women stay in toxic relationships is dependency. Women are sometimes dependent on men either for the feeling of love and fulfillment or for financial gains. And either one of those two can be why a woman stays in a toxic relationship. A lot of times you will hear, we have a lot of financial investments together, or if I leave him, I will lose my children. There is some kind of investment that a woman has placed into, and she is afraid of losing that investment if she leaves, so she remains stuck with a man. And I'm not judging any woman who decides to stay for any one of these reasons. This video is just a little bit of enlightenment, so that sometimes if you ever come across a friend of yours who is with a husband who is maltreating her and you're telling her get out and she's not listening, at least you can begin to understand that this might be one of the reasons why she's staying. And so you can be a little bit more sympathetic towards her in the situation that she's in instead of becoming angry at her. Because oftentimes what happens is women get stuck in bad relationships. Everybody around them is telling them this relationship isn't good for you, get out. She is saying no, and then people become angry because it's like, she's so stupid, she won't listen, she wants to stay in that toxic relationship, then let her stay. There is more to it than just her wanting to stay. There is deeper underlying issues that's happening and going on as to the reason why she's deciding to stay. And so I go back to my point of being dependent on the man in one way or another keeps her tied to him. I'm going to focus on financial dependency here because it's one of the reasons why women actually stay with men. And this is exactly the reason why I advise young women to get themselves trained or skilled in something and to work. I advise women to work, not so that they get their money and pour it all for the husband and the children and have nothing left for themselves, even though I encourage them to contribute to their family households. But I also encourage women to keep some of their financial earnings for themselves, either in the eventuality or the case that something happens to their husband, whether the husband passes away or the husband loses their job or something, so they can have something to help the family with. But also, in case, God forbid, I pray that everybody's marriage, whose marriage is good for them, that their marriage lasts. But should in case that marriage not last, a woman will also have something for herself that she can use to rebuild her life again and to start over again. Because being financially dependent on a person completely will sometimes make you vulnerable to that person. When that other person knows that without me, you can't eat, without me, you have nowhere to live, you will be forced to remain under their toxic control for a longer time than you need to be. And so it is a smart move that a woman has a little bit of money for herself that she keeps away in her own account, not in her husband's account, okay? I'm sorry for husbands watching this, you're not happy to hear this. But I think it's healthy for a woman to have her own money because it just means that she's able to get herself out of bad situations if that situation requires money for her to get herself out of. including a toxic marriage, if that be the case. And so that is my advice to women. Don't become 100% completely dependent on a man or on anybody in this life. If you have a skill, utilize your skill. As long as what you're doing is halal and you're earning halal income, go for it. You can have children, and once your children are a little bit older, they've started going to nursery full time or going to school full time, then you can start doing something. You can open an Etsy account and start creating stuff to sell, right? You can start working part-time if your timetable allows. And even if it doesn't, some women are very, very smart to the point where if the husband gives a certain amount for household upkeep, they're able to be smart enough about how they spend that money. And they're also able to say, look, I'm able to save this per month. Is it okay if I keep that as my own allowance? And if the husband's happy with it, then she can start saving something for her own allowance. And with her savings, she may also be able to invest her money so that the money works for her more and it grows without her having to put in too much effort or exert too much energy. So be smart and intelligent about how you handle your money so that you don't end up having to stay in a toxic relationship just because you don't have or you can't afford to rent somewhere to live if that marriage was to fall apart. The final reason that I want to mention as regards to why women stay in toxic relationships is because oftentimes they feel like they can save the person. They can save this man, they can change this man, they can make him change, right? They can be his therapy so that he gets himself out, because I see the good in this man so much. I know what he can potentially be. So I'm going to put up with, the toxic behavior for now with the hope in mind that eventually he does change. Now, whether he's going to ever change or not, you will never know. But women can stay in relationships, toxic relationships, because they have the hope that one day this man will change. And unfortunately, sometimes some people never change for the better, and sometimes some people do. You just never know. And so it's a gamble. So sisters, those are some of the reasons why women stay in toxic relationships. And it is not for us to judge whether they are right or wrong in doing so. If we are people who care about women in these situations, we just want them out because it's the natural thing. We want them to have relief. We want them to be happy in life. We don't want to always see our fellow sisters or fellow friends, our fellow mothers crying all of the time. We want them to be in a place of peace. So it's natural for us to just be like, get out of this. But should in case one day you tell a woman get out of it and she doesn't want to get out of it, you can come back and watch this video again and really understand that there are deeper underlying issues why she is choosing to stay. Now, if any woman is out there watching this and you are in one of these situationships and you identify yourself to be staying because of any of the reasons that I've mentioned, what to do now is you need to seek help. You need help. You need counseling. You need support in one way or another. You need an exit plan. If you're planning to leave one day, you need to put a plan into place, because there is only so much control that one person can have over another. At the end of the day, we must humble ourselves and realize that nobody's going to change because we want them to change. People only change because they want to change. And if people that we are in relationships with refuse to change, then the only person that can change is you. And the way you change is by your mindset first, and then the actions that follow. So get some help with your specific situation and find a way to either live with what you have, but live in a way that gives you much more of a sense of peace, or put an exit plan into place and plan your way out of these toxic relationships. It is not by force to live with a person who is toxic. It is not by force. You don't have to take it. You have not been sent as the sacrificial lamb for this person's evil deeds. You don't have to take it. If too much is too much, you've feared Allah, you've given it time, you've prayed istihara, you've tried to be patient, you've exhausted all of your means, sometimes you have to say thank you and goodbye, because that is the only language some people understand. I hope this video has been quite enlightening, guys. I have thoroughly actually enjoyed sitting here and conversing with you guys on this. I hope we continue the conversation in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for all of the love and support you guys are giving me, for just being consistent with uploads these last few weeks. It has been such a pleasure. I know that a lot of people say that, but I honestly feel like I have the best audience, because I feel like I have an audience, a group of brothers and sisters and people who fear Allah, and so that's what makes us special, a special community here on this channel. So I really appreciate you guys' support. If you know of any woman who is going through a difficult time and you think this video might be helpful to them, please make sure you share it with them. If you haven't seen this video that I made about highly feminine women and their characteristics, and you're interested in becoming a more feminine woman yourself, then definitely check out that video. And guys, by the way, I have a new channel. It's called Nafisa at Home, and over there I share everything that is to do with homemaking. So if you're interested in that, definitely subscribe to that new channel. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video, inshallah. Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.